Jimmy Savile, once celebrated as one of Britain's most recognizable television personalities, left behind a legacy that has become one of the most disturbing scandals in modern media history. From his rise to fame as a DJ and television host to the horrifying revelations that surfaced after his death, Savile's life story is a cautionary tale of unchecked power, media manipulation, and institutional failure. James Wilson Vincent Savile was born on October 31, 1926, in Leeds, England. He was the youngest of 7 children in a working-class Roman Catholic family. His early years were marked by hardship, including the death of his father when Jimmy was still a teenager. He left school at 14 and began working in the coal mines during World War II. It was during this time, he later claimed, that he suffered a spinal injury in a mining explosion, forcing him to spend months recuperating. By the late 1940s, Jimmy Savile had transitioned into the world of entertainment, first as a nightclub manager and then as a pioneering DJ. He claimed to be the first person to use twin turntables to keep music playing without interruption, a technique that would later become standard for DJs. Whether or not he truly invented this method is debatable, but it showcased his knack for self-promotion and his desire to stand out. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, Savile became a regular presence in dance halls and radio stations across the UK. His flamboyant fashion, complete with brightly colored tracksuits, jewelry, and trademark cigars, became part of his larger-than-life persona. In 1964, he became the first presenter of Top of the Pops, a BBC program that would go on to become a cornerstone of British pop culture. This role catapulted him into the national spotlight and made him a household name. Savile's eccentric personality made him an appealing figure to both the public and the media. He was quirky, unpredictable, and seemingly tireless. He ran marathons, hosted radio shows, raised money for charities, and mingled with celebrities and royalty. He was, to many, the embodiment of generosity and flamboyant goodwill. In 1975, Savile began hosting Jim'll Fix It, a show where he granted children's wishes on air. It ran for nearly 2 decades and became one of the BBC's most iconic programs. Viewers were charmed by the seemingly kind-hearted host, who helped children achieve their dreams from meeting astronauts to starring in musicals. Outside of entertainment, Savile cultivated a reputation as a devoted philanthropist. He raised millions of pounds for hospitals, supported mental health institutions, and even volunteered at places like Broadmoor Hospital, Stoke Manville, and Leeds General Infirmary. In recognition of his charitable work, he received numerous honors, including an OBE in 1971 and a knighthood in 1990. At the height of his fame, Savile was untouchable, revered by the public, and respected by figures across all levels of British society. However, behind the mask of eccentric benevolence lay a far darker truth. Throughout his career, rumors circulated about Savile's inappropriate behavior, particularly around young girls. These whispers, often dismissed or ignored, were known in some entertainment circles and among certain members of the press. But the sheer scale of his public persona and his close ties with institutions like the BBC and the National Health Service made the allegations difficult to pursue. Savile's death on October 29, 2011, just 2 days before his 85th birthday, was met with public mourning and tributes. He was eulogized as a national treasure, a beloved entertainer who had given so much to the country. His funeral was held in Leeds, where his coffin was displayed in a golden casket and laid to rest in a cemetery with a headstone that proudly listed his many accolades. Then everything changed. In October 2012, nearly a year after his death, the British television program Exposure aired an episode titled The Other Side of Jimmy Savile, presented by Mark Williams Thomas, a former police officer turned investigative journalist. The program featured multiple women who came forward with shocking allegations of sexual abuse committed by Savile. These were not isolated incidents. They painted a picture of a man who had systematically abused children and vulnerable adults over the course of decades. The floodgates opened. Within weeks, hundreds of people came forward with similar accounts. An investigation was launched by Scotland Yard under the codename Operation Yewtree, specifically aimed at uncovering abuse connected to Savile and other high-profile individuals. The findings were devastating. In January 2013, police revealed that Savile had sexually abused at least 450 people, with victims as young as 8 years old. The offenses spanned from 1955 to 2009 and took place in nearly every location where Savile had accessed BBC studios. Hospitals, schools, and even cemeteries. Even more horrifying was the realization that many of these abuses could have been prevented. Several institutions had received complaints about Savile over the years, but they were often ignored, covered up, or not taken seriously. At the BBC, employees had suspicions about his behavior, but the culture of silence and fear prevented action. At hospitals like Stoke Manville and Broadmoor, where Savile had unprecedented access to patients, staff often felt powerless or were actively discouraged from speaking out. Savile used his celebrity status and philanthropic image as a smokescreen, hiding in plain sight while abusing those most vulnerable. His connections with powerful figures, including Margaret Thatcher, Prince Charles, and senior police officers, further insulated him from scrutiny. He boasted about having friends in high places and cultivated relationships that helped protect him from allegations. One of the most troubling aspects of the Savile scandal was the role of institutions that enabled or ignored his behavior. The BBC came under intense scrutiny for its failure to investigate allegations made during his lifetime. A planned Newsnight segment about the abuse was famously shelved in 2011, just before the BBC aired a glowing tribute to Savile. Internal investigations, like the Dame Janet Smith review, later concluded that the BBC had missed numerous opportunities to stop him. The National Health Service, which allowed Savile to volunteer at multiple hospitals for decades, was also criticized for failing to act on early warning signs. Several staff members recalled uncomfortable encounters and even reported incidents, but nothing was done. The scandal sent shockwaves through the UK. It raised difficult questions about power, celebrity, and the willingness of institutions to protect their own reputations at the expense of victims. It also encouraged other survivors of abuse to come forward, leading to a broader reckoning about sexual abuse in Britain, particularly by those in positions of power. In the years following the revelations, Savile's legacy was systematically dismantled. Streets, buildings, and institutions bearing his name were renamed or removed. His headstone was taken down and destroyed. Honors, including his knighthood and papal award, were rescinded posthumously. Once seen as a beloved eccentric and national hero, Savile became a symbol of betrayal and institutional failure. The Savile case also had a broader cultural impact. It led to a shift in how abuse allegations were handled in the UK, encouraging police, media, and institutions to take victims more seriously. Operation Yewtree led to the investigation and arrest of several other public figures, including Rolf Harris and Max Clifford, in what was described as a long overdue reckoning. For the victims, however, justice was elusive. Savile died without ever facing trial, leaving many survivors feeling robbed of accountability. Their courage in coming forward helped shine a light on the truth, but it could never undo the pain he caused. Today, Jimmy Savile is remembered not for his entertainment career, but for the grotesque scale of his crimes. His story is now taught as a warning about the dangers of unchecked power, the seduction of celebrity, and the importance of believing survivors. It forced a nation to confront uncomfortable truths about complicity and silence. Netflix's dramatized series The Reckoning, released in 2023, reignited public debate. Starring Steve Coogan as Savile, the series sought to depict his life while centering the voices of survivors. The show drew both praise and criticism, with some applauding its intention to educate and others questioning the ethics of dramatizing such horrific events. Regardless, it confirmed that Savile's story remains etched in the collective memory of a nation forever changed. Jimmy Savile's biography is not just the story of one man's dual life. It is a lens through which we must examine the systems and structures that allowed such abuse to flourish. It is a grim reminder that charm, philanthropy, and fame can all be used as tools of manipulation. And it is a call to action, to build a society that listens, protects, and holds the powerful accountable.